welcome to the Worship Ministry Training Podcast. My name is Alex Infieja. I'm so glad you are tuning in today. This podcast is for worship leaders and worship team members who want to improve in your craft and calling. And if you are a new listener, welcome. I want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast in your favorite podcast app. Why? Because every single month you will get a helpful, practical, in-depth, topical teaching on worship ministry and how to improve your worship ministry. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, if you're a new listener, check out all the past episodes from the last 8 years. Want to encourage you. We've done tons of topics, tons of content, all for free. So check out the content library and just scroll back in time. Hit any episodes that you want to listen to that will help you in this season of your ministry. And if you are someone who is really hungry to grow and you desire to grow as a worship leader, I'm going to point you to the Worship Ministry Training Academy. What is the Academy? It is basically a community filled with everything you need to build a thriving worship ministry. Literally everything. We have 10 in-depth courses on topics like set building, team building, group communication, administrative systems. So we have courses, we have live monthly trainings on topics like wise boundaries in ministry, because all these pastors are failing and falling. So monthly workshops, we have team resource documents, we have team discipleship material for your worship team. So check out the Academy. It is $1 to try for 15 days. You get full access to play around for $1. And then after that, it's just $29 a month, and that's full access to everything. Literally, we have team member training materials for you. We have an onboarding process that's already done for you. We have an audition process that's already done for you. So it's literally like, if you need help in your ministry, this is the resource that you need. So go to worshipministrytraining.com to check that out and to start your trial. And I hope to see you inside of the Academy. Part of the Academy is we do live interviews with experts, so different worship leaders that you've probably heard of. Recently, we've had Andy Rozier on from Vertical Worship, and Andy did a Q&A session. And so this month, instead of giving you one podcast episode, I'm going to be giving you 3 podcast episodes. We're going to be breaking up the questions into single episodes. So this first question is in regards to how do we balance spontaneity in worship versus planning? Because this particular Academy member, she had an incredible encounter with the Lord. Their service was interrupted by the Lord. And she's like, how do I go back to just planning 4 songs next week? And so Andy drops some mad wisdom on her in this first episode. Enjoy it, and I'll talk to you at the end.
When you're a church that has multiple services and you do the same set, it's really important to remember that the Spirit is not going to show up for the second service and be like, okay, let's just run the play. Let's just do exactly what happened, And so, like when something like that happens, which happened to you this past weekend, kind of next weekend, you kind of have to go back to the default, and just become like, okay, let's just like go back to what we were planning to do, which is often the case within worship planning. A lot of people don't have like what is our ground zero? What is our default plan? That seems to work for our congregation, but also seems to allow the Spirit to have access to be the worship leader in the moment, because when it's there's a spectrum of chaos and control. Okay, chaos on one side, control on the other. And the thing that is the physical thing that is the furthest side on control is a graveyard. Maybe literally, but definitely metaphorically, because if you control something too much, you end up killing it.
Yeah.
Like if you control a relationship too much, you end up killing it. If you control a worship set too much, you end up killing it. Like there's no room to breathe, because it's just like detail. But if there's too much chaos in a relationship, then as well, like no one knows what to think. Well, no one has a plan, And so finding the space between planning a set where there's like It's not too controlled, and it doesn't feel like chaos. Is a great default, I think, in worship planning. My little phrase is kind of something like, everybody good? And everybody's like, yeah, we're great. And I'm like, good. We have a plan. The plan is to follow the plan until God changes the plan, and that's the plan. you know, because having a plan is great. That's how you win a Super Bowl. Super Bowls are won not by people going rogue. Super Bowls are won by people having a plan and following the plan, and that's how you win a Super Bowl. And the worship of God is much more significant than a Super Bowl game. But having a plan, I think, honors God enough that he's like, great, you guys have a plan? He's like, yeah. And sometimes God's like, I love that plan. Let's do that plan. And sometimes God's like, I like that plan, but I have a few thoughts about something I might do, in the morning. And we're like, that's great, Lord. You are the worship. Your Holy Spirit is the worship leader ultimately, and we are following, So
that's similar to what I kind of advise Monica, is just like, you have a plan and then be willing to let the Lord interrupt the plan. I think in our like modern worship or like program pragmatic evangelical services where there's like, we need to do these songs, we need to do this announcement, we need to like, basically we've kind of like told God like, you're welcome here, but you have to fit into our program, because honestly, if he did interrupt in the way that he interrupted at Monica's church, like, what does your pastor do? Hopefully he's like, yes, let's keep going. But like, what is your, like, well, we didn't announce the baptism, or we didn't announce the picnic, or we didn't announce, and it's like, it's almost like we've become too in a box,
controlled. It's too far on the control.
Yeah.
That's where it is. Like it's, and you can feel it. You can feel it as it's kind of like notching its way over to kind of like, wait a second, are we asking God to stand in the corner and be like, look, God, look at this thing that we've created for you? There's a story like that in the Bible about a golden calf, being created and held it up for the Lord. Look, Lord, look, and so finding a little bit of having a plan, but like allowing a little bit of, allowing God to not stand in the corner and spectate, but be in the room and make some changes is essential. As long as we remember that, I would say two things. As long as we remember that he might just want to follow the plan because he was sitting in the planning room with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that spontaneity is not just addition, but subtraction as well.
What do you mean?
We have completely overvalued in the modern worship movement that somehow spontaneity is this higher echelon of like worship leading, whereas if a person can like flow in the spontaneous, then they are somehow like dialed into some super spiritual wavelength that's, I just don't even agree with that. I think that to some churches it's a thing and to some it isn't, and I also think that like young worship leaders who have kind of started to kind of glorify spontaneity only look at it at kind of like, what can I add? And sometimes I think God might be kind of like, well, I actually didn't want you to add something, I wanted you to cut it. And that was also spontaneity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we had Danny Goki at our church on Easter this past year, and like he had all these extra songs, and I was like, there is no way we're gonna get all this into service. And he was in the middle of the set, and he just like looked at his band, and they like cut 2.5 songs and went right to like the outro, which was like a repeat of the intro. So it kind of had this nice bookend, and I was like, how did he just do that? Whatever it was perfect. Like it was amazing.
And there's no wow in that for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the congregation can't like, wow, you cut 2.5 songs, like
Yeah.
they do when we spontaneously add. People are like, oh man, you just added that thing. It was so great. You know, like it's this hyper kind of like just like glorification of like adding. But Danny makes the right move in that moment, and it says, you know what, like let's not do those 2 songs. That's spontaneity as well,
Mm.
and which I think is really, which I think the Lord loves just as much.
Yeah. And Monica, thinking about your question in the academy where you're like, how do I don't just want to pick another set after that happened, but like one thing that I think, or someone that might be worth looking at how they approach it, and I think I even have an episode with him about it, is Jeremy Riddle, where he has the plan, he has the set, he has the tracks, but in between songs he'll like pause his spirit, lean into the Holy Spirit, maybe press into a moment or a melody or a chord progression, see if it's opening up anywhere, and if it is, he goes with it. If he doesn't, he backs off and goes back to the plan, you know. So that's something we don't do at my church. I think we need to, because our church feels pretty, there are churches that are much more programmed than my church, but definitely feel like I don't have the freedom to really take a left turn, you know, at my church. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
mm-hmm.
You know, if I go back to the UK, walk into some Anglican church that has like a liturgy and a structure and order, I don't feel like the Holy Spirit is being quenched or like restricted in any way. Like just because it's not the way that I do it at my church, like that, you know. And so because I think that there's like an element of like the Spirit being like, yeah, I'm in this. I'm completely in this. That's different. I'm finding it hard to explain this, but like that's different than sometimes walking into an environment and feeling like production has become more important than presence.
Mhm.
Performance has become more important than presence.
Mm.
Because you can stand in those kind of old, you know, Anglican churches and go through their liturgy of the morning and sense the presence of God in a massive way. And then you can go to a church that appears like they'll even promote presence, but it feels like performance,
Mm.
you know. And I think one of the healthiest things we can do is maybe just call things for what they are.
Mm.
That's a whole other conversation. But,
We're going to start having those soon.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I'm the worst. I'll just like head down a rabbit trail and just be like, wait, stop.
No, we're going to do one day. I'm telling you, I want to do that series. I think it would bring a lot of clarity and health to, before you jumped on, Monica, Andy and I were talking about like, and I think I mentioned this in the academy too, where like, I want to do a series where I'm exploring like what's wrong with the modern worship movement, or like maybe not what's wrong, but like what are some things we should be kind of cautious about, or are we heading in directions that are unhealthy? And so much of it has to do with YouTube and Instagram. And, you know, I mean, a lot of guys like they get their Twitter or they get their Instagram followers from their like guitar playing on Sundays. And it's like, okay, are you playing for the Lord, or are you playing to get more followers? And it's just like, there are always mixed motives in all of our hearts, but like, it's just getting into such weird territory. And I think it probably all started with like the internet, you know?
Right.
I have this theory that the internet ruined everything, but, but yet here we are having a great conversation through the internet. So, oh man. All right, well, hopefully this episode was helpful to you. And again, I want to encourage you, if you are serious about growing in your craft, or if you just need help to strengthen your worship ministry, check out the Academy. It is designed to give you everything you need to build a thriving worship ministry. Look, you're busy. You need to focus on leading your team, and let us focus on helping you do that well. We'll give you all the tools and everything you need to lead your team well. You focus on them, we'll equip you, and everybody wins. So check out worshipministrytraining.com to sign up for the academy today. Hope to see you on the inside. God bless.